Right, the Prague Spring, or the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia in 1968. Right, this can be a bit confusing, so I'm going to try and take it really slowly. I suggest that what you do is, as you listen, you just pause this, note a few key points down. This one is all about the causes of the Prague Spring. Now, by my reckoning, I think we've got 5 causes, so just to pre-warn you. Right then, let's set the scene a wee bit. Czechoslovakia was part of the buffer zone. It was a satellite state of Russia. It was a really good one. It was the good boy of the Eastern Bloc. Had a very good standard of living. Its industry was quite good, and it was very obedient to Russia. Okay. The thing is, in the 1960s, there was a lot more opposition to Soviet control in the 1960s and to the communist leadership. Now, I think there are 5 reasons for that opposition. The first one is that the leader of Czechoslovakia since 1957 was a guy called Novotny. 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 All right. Now, he was very, very, very unpopular. He was a hardline communist. That means he just loved communism and it had to be the communist way, and he was really strict. He was totally obedient to Moscow. Okay. He wouldn't pass any reforms, and he'd been very, very, very slow to release political prisoners. Now, this is something that Khrushchev had done in Russia following de-Stalinization, but it hadn't happened in Czechoslovakia. Now, so by the 60s, the people are expecting a release of prisoners, and it's not happened. So he's a very unpopular leader, 1. Second point, the Czech economy. Now, it was initially very good. However, it started to go into decline. And when it started to decline, so too did the standard of living of the Czechs themselves. Now, this was partly because Russia made Czechoslovakia sell their raw materials, particularly steel, which Czechoslovakia was very famous for, to the Soviet Union. The problem was, the Czech economy needed those same raw materials that the Russians were making them sell. Also, the Soviet Union stopped Czech factories from making consumer goods. Now, consumer goods basically means the nice things, the things you like, the things that you spend your money on for fun. And the Russians had said, look, stop doing it, just build machinery and stuff like that. The national economy fell, got poorer and poorer, and also then when Novotny realised the economy needed changing, he introduced some reforms, but they just didn't work. So, first point, Novotny very unpopular. Second point, the economy was going into decline. Thirdly, because of these, because of the economy collapsing, what you found was that we got a lot more calls for democracy within Czechoslovakia. Now, in October 1967, a whole group of reformers, that means people that want change, or wanted change, which included a guy called Dubcek, D-U-B-C-E-K, Dubcek, challenged the leadership of Novotny. And in January of 1968, Novotny was replaced by Dubcek. He became the new leader of Czechoslovakia. And that was supported, it was cool, it was okay, by the leader of Russia, who, if you remember correctly, is Brezhnev. Now, that's the third one. Calls for democracy, and along comes Dubcek. The fourth thing is that Dubcek, when he came to power, introduced a reform program. This is known as the Prague Spring, because he introduced a set of reforms in the spring, in Prague, the capital of Czechoslovakia. Now, these reforms were also known as socialism with a human face. That's good, that will get you some good marks if you say that. It shows a bit of wider reading or listening. Now, the thing is, even though Dubcek was going to introduce some reforms, he was still a communist. He still believed in communism. He just wanted to get rid of the worst bits of it, the nasty stuff. Right. His freedom, his reforms included increases in political freedom. Now that meant free speech and relaxation of press censorship. In addition to that, he introduced a 10-year programme, oops, I didn't drop my notes there, of reform, which would allow for democratic elections and a multi-party state. The third thing is he reduced the power of the secret police. I mean, they were hated in Czechoslovakia. They were no longer allowed to imprison you without a trial. He removed travel restrictions and increased communications with the West, and he improved working conditions in the factories. 1. Increased political freedom. 2. 10-year programme of political reforms, democratic elections. 3. Reduced the power of the secret police. 4. Removed travel restrictions. And 5. Improved working conditions. Now, nothing too radical there. He is still a communist. However, as with de-Stalinisation introduced by Khrushchev in the mid-50s, the consequence of this relaxation is that people demand more and more and more. So it encouraged increased demands for reform in Czechoslovakia. The USSR suddenly started to get a little bit worried by this, a little bit scared. This is not particularly good. They were worried, 1, because they thought that the radical ideas in Czechoslovakia would spread throughout Eastern Europe and lead to a weakening of the satellite states of Soviet Russia's buffer zone. They were also worried that Czechoslovakia would leave the Warsaw Pact. Now, as we know from the Hungarian uprising of '56, the one thing Russia doesn't want to happen is anything to weaken the Warsaw Pact. That's their defence against future invasion. Now, Brezhnev came under a great deal of pressure from the East German leader. That's a guy called Walter Ulbricht. Ulbricht, I don't know, my German is particularly poor. Spell it Ulbricht, Ulbricht. And the leader of Poland. And they both kind of like, Brezhnev, stop it. This guy's, his ideas are going to spread to our countries and cause us loads of problems. You've got to crush him. So Brezhnev went, yeah, okay, fair dues. So he started talking a lot to Dubcek and constant communication with him, saying, look, you need to just rein in these reforms because it's going to cause problems. Now, Dubcek refused. So, the 5th cause of the Soviet invasion of Czechoslovakia, of the crushing of the Prague Spring, is the Brezhnev Doctrine. Truman Doctrine, Brezhnev Doctrine. Doctrine means an idea, a belief. So this is Brezhnev's belief. And what he said was that the USSR had the right to invade any country in Eastern Europe whose actions threatened the security of the whole Eastern Bloc. What he basically means is, if any country in Eastern Europe does anything that might threaten the Warsaw Pact, Russia was justified in invading. That was his excuse, his justification for invading Czechoslovakia. And he did it in 1968. And that will be the events. Okay, I suggest you rewind this, pause it as needed, make some notes. Make sure you read your textbook. It's very, very, very good on this. And if you want some extra reading, try Ben Walsh. That's a great book on this. Thank you.